welcome to another episode of
the Super Data Brothers Super Show.
That's right. All right, thank you. Live from Day to Day, Texas 2025. I am Ryan.
I am Eric.
And we are two real life brothers.
It's true.
Yeah!
But finally, real brothers.
And we are, so we get this asked this all the time. Are we real brothers? Yes, we are real brothers who work in the data and analytics industry. And we got a good one for you today, folks.
Boy, do we know, Ryan. I'm so excited for today's show because we're at Day to Day, Texas. We're talking with Joe Reis. That's all you really got to say. So let's get on.
All right, let's get on with it. Joe, welcome to the show.
Ryan does all the acting normally, so here you can have it.
All right.
Oh, thank you. You're the strong and silent type, right?
Yeah. I do all like the actual technical reviews and he talks about stuff.
I'm the business brother. He's the party brother. That's kind of how it boils down.
Like a party.
All right, so welcome, Joe, back to the show. So what we want to talk about today, and this was kind of inspired by a recent Substack post you made about kind of BI in the age of AI. So obviously, AI is having a big impact on everybody in the data industry, and we wanted to bring you on to talk about that in particular because Eric and I are BI guys. Your view on that. So why don't we get started there, Joe? BI in the age of AI. What does AI mean for BI going forward, and what are you seeing out there?
Well, I don't think it's any secret that every BI vendor is going to be an AI vendor. So that's the first one. So I don't know if you just swap the letters permanently or not.
Yeah.
But, and how that usually manifests itself is some form of being able to chat with your data. Who's seen these in the audience? Who hasn't seen? And I think the article that I wrote really, I think there were a couple themes to it, right? It was sort of one, like who's asking for this, first of all, from a user perspective? Like, do I want to chat with my data? Second, I think that there were some conceptions out there that traditional dashboards and reports would go away because now if you can just chat with your data, why do you need to look at anything? But then I think the counter argument that I brought up was, I don't know, most questions are answered by, most of the metrics you need are already in your reports, and I know report utilization is usually quite low. So the question was, well, people aren't using the reports that already give them the answers that they need to run their business. What's leading me to think that because you can chat with your data, usage will go up and will magically all be chatting with data? I just don't see it.
Do you think there's a possibility, because that's true. If you look at studies, we see Gartner, for example. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's always every once in a while they do a study where they say, "Hey, BI engagement is 16% of the organization," or something like that.
Yeah, I think one of their stats was like 43% utilization of tools or something like that.
Yeah, it's always really low, and so the question then is, do you see any? Could a chat interface or some kind of AI interface, at the very least, make it easier to find stuff? Or let me back up a second. Why aren't people engaging with this stuff if it already exists? What's the barrier that prevents them from accessing these metrics and reports?
I don't know. I mean, it seems. I mean, I posed a question to the audience. I'm not that smart of a guy. I don't know. But it would seem that it's sort of dashboard blindness, really. Like, how many people have look at their dashboards for their company on a regular basis?
All right, so we got 3 out of maybe 4 out of 25.
Yeah, who's seen dashboard blindness occur in the work? Right?
Yeah,
everybody.
That's everybody.
So, and it's just one of those things, right? But I think, and the analogy I gave to one of my friends was, okay, so the classic example of a dashboard is a car. You drive a car, it has a speedometer, gas, the things that matter to you when you're driving a car. It's like, now imagine a vehicle where you just eliminated all these visuals.
Tesla.
Well, then you can just chat. Every time you have a question about how fast you're going, you have to ask, like, what's my speed right now? How am I doing on gas? Do I have enough to get to where I need to go? I mean, that's sort of, because what is in response to one of the arguments that you don't need to have dashboard, like traditional BI goes away because of AI. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, if you take this thought experiment of a vehicle, I think that'd be a hellacious experience of driving. I don't know, does that sound like a cool car to you? Do you want that? No, maybe. the sound majority. But that, I mean, that's kind of the thinking, right? So I think it's a world where it's both. Like, because I think there's a lot of vendor pressure that says, well, traditional BI is dead. We don't need it anymore. Let's simply have ChatGPT. Doing ChipPoint actually had a really good visualization yesterday. A really good example in her talk where you talked about I don't know, what was it, like a tax preparation software company. They had just an LLM chat box that you just, and people, what they found was people don't like to type. So that then they started including kind of like, here's some teaser or some guiding questions. So Bethany, you have your hand up.
Yeah, well, so this is a live show, folks, and that means it's more fun for everyone if we all participate. So what I'm gonna do is you're gonna run the mic? All right, Eric's gonna run the mic. When you get the mic, say your name and then ask your question so everybody at home knows who's talking.
Or if you're not at home, you're out driving.
Thanks, Bethany here. So I think that this is missing, like that whole idea of chat with your data has forgotten the point of BI, which is to align different departments to common goals. If everybody's looking at different things, you're then not doing that. Like, what do you guys think about that?
I think it's incredibly spot on. Yeah, I mean, part of the emphasis of business intelligence was to have a cohesive view of the business that could be looked at across businesses, and I think what you're alluding to is inverting that and creating a lot of silos. Yeah. Yes.
My name is Lila. You were mentioning this idea of if the car didn't have a speedometer on there, it'd be kind of useless because we all want to see the speed. But you could imagine taking this worldview where, and I don't even know how I feel about this, but
go for it.
Imagine we have all short attention spans, so cars are self-driving now, or maybe they're mostly automated, and you're watching a YouTube video, but every time your speed goes above a certain threshold, it becomes a push model rather than a pull model, which is what chat models are. You pull, you're asking, what if it just pushes information at you? It's like, hey, you're 10 miles over the speed limit.
And it shows you an ad.
Yeah.
It really is.
Break the speed.
Yeah, like an ad for like this is the most boring, like life insurance or something. You're just like, I can't watch this. I'll go to this one. Yeah, no, it's an interesting idea. And I'm not saying that like AI and BI can't coexist. I'm just thinking like the market pressure right now that everything has to be AI. I'm like, because when I talk to users, BI, like people who actually like do BI and then people who use reports, it just makes you wonder like who's actually asking for this right now. But then the common rebuttal is, well, but Steve Jobs said like people don't know what they want and you should just like force things on them because that's the way that things work.
I mean, also we don't want the chart to be different on different axes every day we load it because the AI model decides to render a slightly different chart every day.
Yeah, well, I mean, that actually brings up an interesting point too, because the variations in visualization, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of cook the report too. And if you're not savvy, and this is why data literacy is really important. There's a whole book, what was it, How to Lie in Statistics, written back in the 50s, right? Excellent book, still popular, still relevant. But it was bad at one company. It was so bad that actually the owner of the company said, "You're going to give me a table of data," because he's actually really number savvy. He's like, I don't want anyone providing charts anymore. This happened, and that cleaned up a lot of old stuff.
So I have a very important fried chicken taco from Queso's Tacos. Daniel is the winner. I'm gluten free and I'm ordering a fried chicken tacos.
That's not the walk of that.
Calm down.
Walking tacos.
That should be the name of his food truck.
What
His Hawking Taco.
Walking tacos.
Yeah.
There was another joke there. But.
Yeah.
No, that's it. Taco.
Hey, this is Richard. I hate to play devil's advocate, but I'm sure some of us have worked with stakeholders with them. You know, I don't need the data to make this decision. I know, like, in my heart of hearts, this is the way to do things. This is how we've always done things.
That's not devil's advocate, that's just a reality. I mean, it's nothing controversial, I don't think anyone's gonna disagree, this happens like, probably right now in thousands of companies around the world, somebody's like, it's all up here, what do I need you and your data for? I mean, who's seen that? Well, yeah. And this actually happens in supposedly data-driven organizations as well, whatever that's supposed to be these days. Yes, Annie?
I'm Annie, and this idea of chat with your data and is it gonna do this or that or whatever. At my company, we have the AI tool that we work exceptionally hard to make work. But we also, just recently, everyone got access to Claude, and, which is an AI tool. And we also have an internal AI tool, which is our own version of ChatGPT, basically. And what we're seeing across the whole business is we're sharing, and we have this AI at our company channel in Slack, and everyone's sharing, hey, I downloaded this CSV, or I took a screenshot of this, or I did this, and I put it into Claude, or I put it into our ChatGPT. And then I got these answers, and it was really helpful. And so these people are chatting with their data right now, but they're doing it by downloading a CSV, taking screenshots, having local things on their machine. So I have a KR, a key result exporter, to like look at this, chat with your data idea, and it's not this, is it gonna replace BI or whatever, it's not this big philosophical discussion. It's, we are chatting with our data right now and not doing it in a scalable or secure way. And so it's a real problem that we have to solve, not a, oh, it's gonna replace BI. So I don't know. I don't know how
No, that's very smart. It's almost like the Excel problem on steroids, right? You know, it's like the bane of the BI person's existence for a long time was and continues to be, you know, what's the most popular button in every BI tool? Export to Excel, right? And the ability to take, oh, you know, I'm just gonna take a screenshot and I'm gonna load that up to some AI and the AI will interpret the screenshot for me. It's almost export to Excel with even a lower barrier of entry. So it's a huge problem, and I don't know, like, how can, do you have any thoughts on how people can go about trying to solve that? Because I think, I'll preface this by saying, you know, sometime around 2016, I had a conversion experience where I gave up trying to keep people from exporting data to Excel.
You found Christ.
Yeah, I did, and it was in the form of that little green button on everyone's desktop. I gave up, it was impossible, right? I just realized there was nothing I could do to get everything into the BI tool to a point where nobody would ever click that damn button again. And so then I just kind of embraced it and said, look, if that's what they want to do, I'm actually going to make it easier for them to get at least the right data into Excel.
Yeah.
How do you handle that? And then go to the next step. Okay, if people can screenshot PowerPoints and then dump that into an AI, like what can you do, if anything, about that?
I don't know, I mean, you just gave the addict an extra crack pipe is what you did, so it's just, I mean, if you're gonna do it, use a nice lighter, have a nice day. That's kind of what you just did, but I mean, so I don't know, I mean, because people do these workarounds because they need to get work done, right? And so this is now the most convenient solution. It used to be, you just do everything in Excel, now you do everything in Excel plus Claude, right? And it does a good job. The thing is, there's no universal standards in terms of how you collectively solve problems in a company, right? And the AI can sort of just solve it however. And so it makes you wonder, like, there's going to be a lot of bespoke analysis that's done through a black box, and what the impacts of that'll be fascinating to study. But in terms of like, how do you stop this? I don't know. I mean, Metallica tried stopping MP3 downloads back in the day, and that didn't seem to do anything. So, you know, they can't do it.
Yeah.
So we're talking a lot about dashboards and how can we query our dashboards with AI, but I think a simpler case would be people don't really know what dashboards exist. Like
This is true.
I have people come to me and ask me questions about telematics data that I work with, and I'm like, we have a dashboard for that, and they're like, what? Or recently we had an issue with some data, and they had a dashboard that I was not aware of. And I think that with cloud services and things, we're moving to a place maybe where that AI has the context to be able to help with doing these types of searches to actually tell people about it instead of not having to like know the person who might build the dashboard. And I think that's more useful than this prompt to like query the data to make ad hoc dashboards. Like, let's just take advantage of the things we already built.
Yes.
Exactly. Bravo.
So it's been a while since I've been on the BI side of things, but I really like your point and your point as well. I'm curious how people here are thinking about the distinction between like, you know, LLMs specifically versus something like agents. I think the reason why we see what you're seeing is because it's so accessible to use something like Claude. It's really hard to stand up an agent right now, but that will change in the next couple of years. Will I hit a point where I can just then get an agent to retrieve the data directly from the database and maybe, I don't know if it will create any sort of BI tool on my behalf, but it might be able to just interpret the data with the guardrails in place to actually be devil's advocate here.
Well, it's an interesting question, and it kind of reminds me of the questions surrounding real-time analytics as well, where, because if you have an agent that can take action and get the data, then my next question would be, so this is a question I'd ask people when they ask for real-time reports. First question is like, what are you gonna do with this data? Like, what action do you wanna take based on this? Are you gonna literally stare at the report as it updates every second? And that'd be very odd. Like waiting, you know, of course, you're gonna automate something, right? You're gonna automate some sort of action based on that. If you're dealing with that, it would be senseless to do otherwise. I wonder with agents, like, you know, the same argument, like, you can look at the data, but in a certain circumstance where you can look at it for decision making, which goes back to his point earlier, where you got your decision making. But it's kind of like, could the agent just do the action that you were going to do with the data, right? And then that's because agent workflows, I look at that more as like, you can complete a lot of tasks. So why don't you just do the tasks instead of just looking at the data? Just go get it done.
My question is, how long will it take the agent to hit the export to Excel button?
We'll figure that out real quick. They'll do that, and then it'll like also type in the drop table on SAP production database and free itself from misery. So, this is how it becomes self-aware and becomes Terminator. I think it's actually an IT person that does drop table and read the RF on all the files in your company, and then this is how the apocalypse begins.
All right, we got it.
All right, question over here.
With business users, they end up finding the path of least resistance. So they're effectively just like water, right? They're just going to find whatever's going to be the quickest way to do what they want. And so when those things get turned on, they're going to be asking the questions that are the most pertinent to them. But the problem is so I stood up a self-service environment, and then this director or VP ended up turning around and saying this whole plant of this manufacturing company needs to be shut down because it wasn't profitable. They turned around and shut it down, and the dude didn't put in the proper constraints and proper filtering because he didn't know what he was doing, right? And he presented this report. Hundreds of people lost their jobs. And so with those types of like free-form ability for them to ask the questions, there needs to be a constraint that no core business decisions could be made off of it, knowing that there's hallucinations and that the system may not have been prompted in the right way to ask the right question. But what I think the value add could be is a feedback loop to the BI teams and saying, these are the questions that the business is most interested in, and this is how we can consolidate what those requests are.
Yeah, I like that. And you're absolutely right too. I mean, it could give you like really bad advice, like, you know, close your business. Even though you're like wildly successful, you're like, yeah, that makes sense because it's smarter than me. So it has to mean, yeah, that's interesting. Like, I do wonder what kind of decisions are going to be made. Because I mean, the danger of a lot of this stuff is you start abdicating your thinking to something else. And like, who was it? Jordan Morrow yesterday he gave a really good talk on downtime for people just to think during the workday and actually just like put critical thinking behind problem solving. But I wonder how much that will. I mean, most companies don't do that much anyway, so. But I wonder if it'll be behind even more. Yes, he knows what's up. Anyway.
All right, we got another comment. I was going to make a comment on what you were saying about expert Excel being awesome and not fighting it. I think it's the same with AI. Like, we probably don't want people copying screenshots of numbers because then the model's going to try to do math. You don't want to do that. But I think instead, if we made it easier in these BI tools, say, copy this numbers, but when you copy it, you do export to AI and that just gives you graphs. That's probably better for the model to intuitively look at and make inferences at, just like a human is, rather than like say, here's the exact number. And it also changes the expectations of the kinds of questions you kind of naturally ask.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like that's a great point. Like getting the right information out of BI to put into AI is going to be a big challenge. We have a question.
From Veronica, I'll read this.
Yep.
Veronica Durgan says, issues I've seen BI. 1, people find BI tools hard to use. 2, they cannot find whatever they are looking for easily. Can we look at AI just as a more intuitive way to find KPIs, viz. dashboards? This goes back to your point of the searchability. Yeah, sounds awesome.
Yeah. I mean, actually, that's an area where I think AI can have a pretty immediate impact. Like one of the things we're doing at Good Data, we put actually a small language model in place that's job is just to interpret questions and then route to pre-existing content. That's all it does, because we find that people have a really hard time finding what even exists. You know, like the answer to most self-service questions that customers ask in BI tools, I would venture already exists somewhere in the
That should be
BI.
an FAQ or like a list of reports that just describes what they are.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, is like you go in and you look at the list of reports and oftentimes, you know, they've got crazy names and like they don't, you know, it's revenue by region, by year, underscore V2. Yeah, exactly.
Or something.
Exactly. For Joe.
Yeah, I like different numbers than other people.
All right, we have some more questions in the audience here.
Underscore final V2.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hello, Bethany again. So my background's in BI. I worked at Tableau and then at Cow Analytics. And yeah, so I've been in BI for over 10 years. One of the things that I've observed is like part of the reason people export to Excel is because they don't understand how your numbers are calculated. And so they want to do the computation steps to see like if, you know, if they reproduce your number, they then can understand your number. I think that's a huge problem. And so I think one of the opportunities for AI is actually more, not so much about text to SQL, but actually the reverse SQL to text. Take this database query and tell me what it means, and then that way I can understand if this metric, you know, is it interpreted the way that I want it to be. Who's building that, if anyone? And should it be built? Like explainable BI, basically.
Explainable BI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To the audience, that's a project you should work on. Seems cool.
We have, we'll take a question from the chat here.
Question.
Well, there's a statement. There's a lot of statements. So LinkedIn user, just makes a comment about building a RAG-based AI bot that retrieves content from DBT documentation and dashboards. How do we ensure models and dashboards are well documented? This seems like a good place for some AI tool to automate and make a difference.
What's it going to make documentation that nobody reads?
Yeah.
Except other AIs.
Yeah, it's turtles all the way down. All right, we'll take a question from the audience here.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is just another comment.
No, go for it.
Whoever's at home, like it's Lisa, I'm nobody special, but I think that the interface here that's really ideal, and I don't want to be too biased, but I think it's the catalog. Like I genuinely think that it's the data catalog that's going to be this ideal governable interface for agents and RAG workflows to be able to work directly off of in that. Like you can catalog different dashboards, for instance, or like different pieces of information that you know are useful in this case. And I think if we're catering towards this metadata perspective, I think that it's going to be a much easier system than doing like a straight pipeline.
Once a kid, do you have any thoughts on this?
I fully agree with you. Back to your point, that that's a feature, right? We have a feature like that too. Like all these are just features that we're having. I think we just.
So once a kid is doing this at data level, by the way. So.
No, I mean, it's a feature. I assume, expect all catalogs to do this.
I don't know.
Right?
We're doing this with Apache Gravatina.
There you
so-
go.
I mean, it's content, you just need to manage content.
We do have a live question from YouTube. From where to start Snowflake?
That is.
What? Yeah, we get a lot of comments like
North
that.
Pole, now you're a content creator.
So if anybody, Shazan, if anybody wants to reach out to Shazan and let him know know from where to start Snowflake, he would really appreciate it.
If you could maybe clarify what you mean by from where, like a where clause?
He forgot select, yeah.
Or select somewhere to start something. Yeah, I don't know, I mean, I think from your laptop is a good place to start. Open up a browser and start there, but they have a 2-week trial, so it's pretty cool. Sorry, you won't have to play just coming back.
Veronica from home says, true story, we have reports called For Jim. No one knows who Jim is.
It's like the guy at Milton in Office Space. Remember that? We talked about this the other time, but he's like, he didn't, I think was actually laid off, but he still kept on with work. Yeah. That might be true.
Shazan clarifies, yeah, I forgot to type select.
There's somebody in the audience here, Joe Reis, who asked, shouldn't BI vendors integrate AI to guide dashboard designers to increase the dashboard efficiency and usability?
Yeah.
And he's also here. Yes.
Yes, John George.
All right, we got another comment from the audience.
This is Richard again. Just adding on to that comment, like, you know, I don't know about most engineers, but, you know, most of us may be allergic to documentation. You know who's not allergic to documentation? AI. You know, and then just incorporating that into the data catalog and having this feedback loop, that is an idea.
This is Dan. I'm gonna comment on that. dbt Power User for VS Code lets you generate documentation on your columns. So you can make descriptions of your models and have AI just generate them. So that's pretty cool.
We also have a comment here from Aaron Wilkerson. He says, I see Joe is wearing a Carhartt hoodie. Man, can't talk. Carhartt hoodie. Thanks for the support. So Aaron is the Director of Data Governance at Carhartt. He wants to know if my shirt is also a Carhartt. Unfortunately, Aaron, it is not. So apologies to you today.
We got another quick comment.
All right.
How useful is the documentation that the AI generates based off of very little context?
It's not.
And
It's true, it's not. But it's like a starting point, you know, better than no documentation.
Is it though?
You know, that's true, that's true. You know, that's fair. You know,
Cheeseburger definition.
I'm also gonna feel bad about it being wrong. I mean, sure, but it's probably just gonna live in perpetuity and nobody's gonna look at it. And then some AI is gonna try and use it and it's gonna generate more gobbledygook.
I think that's the problem though, and I mean, the thought experiment would be if you just like put a bunch of random Shakespearean poems in the documentation, would anyone notice?
Jim.
Jim would notice.
Jim would notice.
So this is sometimes, I've heard this question asked before, sometimes leads to some spicy takes, but Auntie Rask asks, is working self-service BI a myth?
Is working.
Yeah. So everybody has self-service BI, but is actually functioning, useful self-service BI a myth?
I will ask you, I don't know the answer to this question.
Does anybody
A
want
myth would imply that it doesn't exist.
I don't know what they mean by how far self-serving are we talking about, because there's a spectrum there.
Yeah, like me.
Perhaps a little bit of all of us.
We're all in the spectrum, so it's okay.
But I think depending on how far along the spectrum you go might be really hard, but a little bit closer might be really possible. And I think a lot of places do offer really cool generative, like text to graph, exactly what's going off your data.
Anybody else have anything to share around success or failure of self-service BI?
I don't trust users to write the queries correctly.
Yeah.
Even with the help of AI.
Why?
It always goes wrong.
So then somebody, he doesn't have a mic, but he's saying that he doesn't trust people to write queries because it always goes wrong, right?
But they don't have domain knowledge. A
They
lot
don't-
of times it's wrong.
It's also a data modeling question, like how well do you serve the stakeholders? I think it's a service UI, I don't
This is Ava Maya, she's talking about data modeling. You want a mic?
Yeah. Yeah, we just need to be enablers, you know, in a way that the self-service is possible. So we can always start with ourselves. And are we making the data in a way that it's self-serviceable? If it's, you know, not clear, then, you know, we can start always from ourselves. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I just figured I'd chime in.
Go ahead, please.
And I'm gonna mention a term. I don't know anything about library information science or ontologies or semantic anything. But my background is old school, traditional SAP, business object, semantic layer. All that means for me is building a layer on top of your data models that just tells the front end how to execute the joins. So like you shouldn't have end users having to like write SQL queries. If you just have a mature BI stack, like answer the question, does it happen? Absolutely. If you're working for enterprises that have like mature data organization and empower their end users and train them and teach them how to use the tools and you have good technology, it's 100% of it. In my observation, like the so-called modern data stack, just to be honest, has a lot less features than old school on-prem mature BI systems, and for reasons for sure, but it's absolutely a thing. But I don't see it nearly as much with modern data stack deployments and some of the more modern tools. I think things like, well, I don't want to get into technology and I don't want to answer this, make this answer too long, but there are like modern BI tools that are starting to introduce a lot of the richer capabilities that you can find in old school on-prem BI. So it is a thing. You don't find it as much, but I think there's a resurgence with a lot of tools like, what's the latest, Omni. Like Omni, Looker, some of these other tools are starting to build out a lot of capabilities that I think are a lot more clever than, in my opinion, things like Tableau and whatnot. I'm not a BI guy, I'm a data engineer, but yeah, they're a thing. You can try them.
No offense to the Tableau fan girls in the audience.
I think we would have the biggest criticisms, actually. The two of us.
Can I do a quick reframe?
Yeah.
Instead of thinking of self-service as like, there's a self-service BI product, that product that can magically make self-service appear, and it's like, it's a magical solution. Thinking of self-service as a process that you go through over time with people, and tools can enable, there's people.
Yeah, I actually think there's a great book called Humanizing Data Strategy by Tian-Kai Feng, who is awesome. If you ever get a chance to meet him. He's incredible. But he has this idea, this little snippet of that book that talks about the battle between like self-service and IT provided analytics, and he tries to kind of bring them together under the umbrella of what he calls co-creation. And that's kind of the model he advocates is like you should be creating together the analytics rather than solely relying on one model or the other. And I think, first of all, it's a great book, so read it if you haven't read it. Humanizing Data Strategy.
Sounds riveting.
It's a very quick read, right? It's like very slim, so you can get through it fast.
It's short and painless.
Joe gave me the mic, so.
Yeah.
I'm gonna comment there. So back to your point. This is why marketing we need to start investing in semantics and knowledge, and it's not a new thing. We've just never been doing it. We've never been investing in it. We've been doing the work, but it's kind of been ad hoc. But I think now we need to expand on how to think about it. So investing that semantic work and putting it inside of just the BI tool, I think is the wrong thing to do, because that semantics, that context will be used by many, many other things. Like earlier we were talking with Bill Inman, he was like talking about all the, going through taxonomy and stuff about what you would use that for text, and you would use that same stuff for your BI, you use that for your data integration, for a bunch of other things. So I think, and now obviously what do LLMs need? The context of your organization. So we just need to start treating that, and it's something that so many other things, applications will be consuming. And I believe that that context should live in an independent place, which should be a catalog.
That was one cicada.
Yeah, one cicada, everybody. That's actually an interesting question. And I see this debated, like where should it live, right? Tools like business objects and Cognos and MicroStrategy from the previous generation of BI, like that was actually a prerequisite for doing anything. The idea that you could just write some SQL queries to send them to a database or or import an Excel file and build BI on top of it in 2005 was not a thing. You had to build this huge metadata model. Now, why did we get away from that? Because it took forever. And people were sick of waiting. And that led to the whole rise of Tableau and Power BI. I used to, I come out of the Cognos world, and I can remember I go to Cognos user groups, and people would say to me, you know, like we're losing all this ground to Tableau. Why are we losing this ground to Tableau? And they would think it's because Tableau was really pretty. And Tableau was really pretty. But I would say the reason your users are using Tableau is because they don't want to call you, right? They don't want to get in your 4-year-old IT queue and wait for you to, you know, change the chart from green to blue. And they want to do it themselves. And that was the main value that at least, you know, in 2014, that I perceived Tableau offering. And it was a real value. So how do we balance that, right? How do we balance people need answers now with we have to put into place the necessary knowledge and metadata models for them to get accurate answers now? And Juan has a comment.
Yeah, so I talked about this directly in my talk yesterday. So an idea here is to actually, we have to balance the urgent and the important, right? Always urgent trumps important. That's, we always live in being immediately and that's up. So we need to figure out how to break that cycle. I think the idea here is you actually have teams, tiger teams who deal with the urgent stuff, right? And are fine to break the rules, are fine to generate the tech debt. And then you have teams who actually do the foundational stuff and keep it and work on the important stuff. That are keeping track of what is being broken to make sure that I'm building things that will not enable it to go in the future. By the way, we do this for software too, right? We have support that people go around, they're on call and stuff. Like, we do this for software. We just gotta bring that into data. Like, we just need to mature ourselves. The other point is, data has in the last 15, 20 years ago was pretty static. Like, I built this thing, we're done. And then we want to be data driven, right? As a new oil. So then it started changing so more and more, but we never upgraded our ways. We've always kept ourselves being ad hoc. So I think we just need to think about methodologies of how to do that.
And does anybody have anything else to share? Like, what approaches do you take in your organization to balance self-service with, you know, with kind of the pre-authored content? And have you had any success with that? If anybody wants to share any war stories. Another question I'm curious about, just I want to see who has the most frightening answer to this. What is the longest you ever saw a BI ticket take to get answered? So I will share mine. I started my very first job in BI was in 2010. I left that job in 2014. There were tickets in the ticketing system in 2010 that were a couple years old that we hadn't filled. And when I left in 2014, they were still unfilled. And the end users still needed them. So that would be 6 years that someone was like, hey, I need a change to my Cognos cube, that we weren't able to accommodate it.
So I will here. So yeah, to your question, I think what's often overlooked is you have to train your users, right? If you provide them with, let's say, Snowflake on top of, let's say, their SAP data and some shiny new BI tools, if you don't take care to train them, they will not use the tooling. The self-service will not be self, but will not work. And this is very often overlooked by the technical teams, by the data teams. And the key is to actually have the business user really use the technology.
Yeah, so aside from the story I had earlier about the self-service going horribly wrong, we have implemented it properly where the best way to do it is you actually sit down with like a particular department and you train them on their most used reports and you have them build it and replicate it. And then you ask them to turn around and build a report for themselves that they think would be very useful. And then you identify who performed the best in that group and you make them a subject matter expert. And then you allow them to do self-service. And once that self-service is like actually going forward, you just make sure that that director of that department is not allowed to make any operational decisions unless it's been approved by the BI team from a report that the BI team has said this has been concreted. So now you have this feedback loop where that SME is pushing requests back up for the semantic layer changes to BI, and then the BI team is no longer building reports. They are organically for their needs. And then that SME is just giving that back up to the BI team, and the BI team will confirm, hey, this report is accurate and then therefore can be used for operational decision making. And that's how I've seen self-service BI being used in a way that was successful.
Do we have more online? Should I just go?
No, yeah, no, go for it. I mean, it's actually quite surprising how many people are in this room and also talking online.
Yeah, like Jean-Georges and Juan are like right next to each other. I don't know. Did you hit him?
Almost.
Okay. He's right there if you want to do it.
So I would posit, hey, all, it's Malcolm. I would posit that if we are serious, sorry, Jean-Georges, I have to go there. If we are serious about data as a product, and we're serious about the idea of product management, then we would take more of a portfolio approach, which would say that some of our customers like self-service, and some of our customers need a lot of hand-holding, and both are okay. And that we should be able to do both based on customer needs. A report for the CEO is drastically different than somebody, a marketing analyst, right? And if there are skills that'll do the self-service, fantastic, but it's not all or nothing. What I would see all the time as an analyst is everybody would go all in on self-service, and then everybody would end up revolting because they lost the ability to do the bespoke stuff and, you know, customize dashboards, that kind of thing. So that's my 2 cents on data as a product.
I think that makes a lot of sense, though. Like, this was a discussion we were having earlier with Jean-Georges and Juan and others about data products, and I think that what was the goal to at least kind of start defining data product, right? I believe it's one of the intentions of the group.
The goal was for Jean-Georges to have a tweet.
The tweet.
I left X, so I'm sorry.
Oh. I'll check out your MySpace account sometime. I think the thing that I came away with, and I think you did as well, is well, I can't speak for you actually, but I'm pointing at you. But it felt like it really was sort of what Malcolm was indicating. It could potentially be all the above. Like, I think a product is sort of in the eye of the beholder. Like, what is valuable to you? But yeah, I think that's a good insight though, Malcolm. So I do find that the self-service argument tends to go towards an extreme where you have to be completely self-service, but then, I don't know, like, do we have to go that way? Because I mean, there are certain like canned dashboards, for example, that I just kind of like to look at. Just because I didn't make it myself doesn't make it any less useful. Right. So.
Okay, we've got a comment in the crowd.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Lisa again. So I really don't want to make this a repeat of the data products conversation.
Oh no, we should repeat that again.
I realized that so much of my focus when it came to the crossover of like DevOps and data ops was around data engineering, and I'm quite ignorant. I really loved what you proposed in terms of organizational ideas. And so I'm throwing this out there as a genuine question is there a run book for something like BI ops? Because I think we focus so much on ML ops and AI ops and data ops, but BI ops sounds like something that's actually useful.
Biopsy.
Biopsy. If anyone has a biopsy guy, I would love to see it. Let's throw it out there.
Actually, has that ever been a thing, like BIOps or BIOps?
I think I made a post one time on LinkedIn about it, and you made fun of me. I think.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I do that a lot.
Yeah, I know.
It wouldn't be too surprising.
Yeah. No, but I think, I mean, like there's so I kind of in that vein, I do view there's kind of, thank you, Joe. There is like it feels like a big part of the story of data for the last, I don't know how long, a little while at least, has been kind of the increasing application of software engineering principles to data, and BI has just been terminally slow in adopting any of it, right? So a lot of BI tools just don't, you look at the APIs and SDKs they have, and can you manage it using CI/CD, and can you integrate it into a pipeline? And for almost all BI tools, the answer is either flat out no, or like, well, what we did is we took the internal APIs and then we just exposed them. So now anybody can use the developer APIs and they suck. And so like it's a big problem actually.
Like, is it not just self-service BI and instead BI as a service? Like, isn't that just the dichotomy that we're talking about, but it's the exact same thing?
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, yeah. It's I think there was a hand up over here. Yeah.
Sorry here.
Okay. Yep.
So jumping back to a previous topic, but I also really like that topic, so, but to jump back previously to what might a successful self-service methodology, look like, I'm gonna revisit a metaphor that I started in the previous session, and ask people to think of the reference desk at a library, and the fact that, librarians do a whole lot more than sit at the reference desk, but there's somebody that is there, that is ready to answer your questions and engage with you. And how can we build the equivalent of that? How can we structure a data team to have that virtual equivalent of a reference desk where you can, it doesn't matter if somebody's coming to you with a curiosity question or like a deep research question, like we talk about curiosity questions like they're bad, right? They're urgent, but they're not a priority. But sometimes indulging that curiosity can lead you to some really important things. We don't want to abandon that trail. And it's also always an opportunity to increase the data literacy of whoever's coming to you genuinely to engage. And so that I think a good partway solution is building out the equivalent of a reference desk for a data team and staffing it appropriately, where you're not taking away from the analysts who need to engage in deep work, but properly allocating time towards that.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Coming back to the original topic, which was AI and BI, I think a lot of people who have to cut the checks for these sorts of things are hoping that AI will just do that, right? Like that's exactly the piece that they're saying, oh, you know what, AI can just handle these questions from users, right? And they're curious about something, let the LLM do it. I'm a little skeptical. I mean, in the long run, probably, right? In the short term, I'm quite skeptical.
I mean, so I'm this is Andrew Ng's avatar, so you can ask him questions now. Like this is, I think it's gonna work as you're going though. See, and you can chat with him about all kinds of stuff, career advice, different things. I'm gonna have a lot on here pretty soon too, so stay tuned.
Joe Bot.
You can ask me all sorts of ridiculous questions from the comfort of your own bed.
All right, I think so. We've got maybe 10 minutes left. I think. So
yeah, we've got a few.
Yep. So let's take some more live questions.
Yeah, to circle us back to, we were just talking about the BI ops. I could say like 10 things, but I work at GitLab, which is a DevSecOps company, it's a DevOps company on the data team. We submitted some talks about BI ops recently. But what I will say is I think there's two kind of avenues. I think a lot of BI tools not only like don't really support BI ops, like bringing, and what I mean by that is like bringing software development principles into BI workflows. But like I was thinking about submitting talks to Tableau conference about how we are bringing BI software development life cycles into what we're doing in Tableau using GitLab and dbt, and it's like really cool. We're using really cool stuff. And I was like, I don't think Tableau would accept this because they don't want us to talk about GitLab and they don't want us to talk about dbt. Maybe dbt Cloud, we actually don't use dbt Cloud because it's the Tableau conference and they want to sell Tableau and they want to sell Salesforce.
Right.
And it's not the direction that their vision isn't for us to be able to do really good BI ops software development life cycles in the BI space. Their vision is for us to use Agentforce and Salesforce.
Yeah. Yeah.
Similarly to Power BI, Looker, like they're unless it becomes part of their way to make money that we can do these software development life cycles, they actually will possibly make it harder and will not provide a platform for us to share, hey, we're doing these things. So will we figure out how to do it? Maybe, hopefully, but just an interesting thought.
I think you've identified actually a real problem that we have in BI, which is that of all the different parts of the data stack, we have the smallest developer community and the smallest open source community. What I mean is everything's extremely tied to vendors. So you have to have a vendor who wants to do that. It's 3-second plug for good data. That's what we do. So we're very focused on that. But yeah, most BI vendors are not. That's not their go-to market strategy, is to make it easy for you to automate, right? That doesn't help sell compute nodes or end user licenses or funnel you to other products on their cloud stack.
Service.
Yeah, services for sure. Okay.
Well, John shows, and this will tie it back, he's always got great questions, like this one.
Which he's asking through chat.
Which he asked through chat, or might be his bot. He asked, will Gen AI simply kill BI?
It's a great question.
It is a great question. What do you all think?
I don't think so.
Why?
Well, okay, how do you define AI?
No, we haven't defined it at all. No, we need to know the sections that define it. BI is
something you can't define.
Yeah, no, BI is the tools that the BI vendor sells you. That's what BI is. That's how you know.
But overall, like data analysis has a lot. AI assumes you have all the data somewhere that describes what you want to do. And humans are really good at having job security by keeping a lot of context in their head, accidentally or on purpose. There's a lot of just context that just lives inside of people's heads.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. But Neuralink will solve that, so. Yeah, and we'll do that over time. But no, I don't know that it kills it. I actually think it's just a natural extension of it, really. I don't think that it necessarily kills it any more than, but I think it's a feature, right? Like when everyone started introducing the chat into the BI tool, I was like, okay, that's no different than a pie chart.
So,
right?
First principles, if you were gonna start from scratch, right? Like this is just a thought exercise, don't throw anything at me. But if you were to start from scratch, knowing what you know about today's technologies, maybe a little bit about tomorrow's, would you build a giant data warehouse to support your BI efforts? Would you? Or would you just dump a bunch of data from source systems, just drop it all somewhere and turn AI on it?
Probably both.
Probably both. I don't know the answer to that question. That's why.
But again, but people in this room probably have ingrained habits that they're going to be hard to shake too. Like the AI, I just know it'd be a lot easier for me to do it the first way, just because I know what I'm doing there. Second one, I'm like, cool. I guess we can tack it on top, right? It'd be an interesting thought experiment, though. I'm starting a company, maybe I'll just go do that when they have more data. Just like throw.
Or the company doesn't exist because they did that.
If the goal is to make smart decisions about how to run your business, again, would you do it all through a data warehouse? I honestly don't know.
I think the initial architecture, going through the conceptual and the logical to build that, and then building out your proper data catalog, and then building out data contracts would enable that LLMs and then Gen AI or Gen BI to actually pick up and go. So I think that would be the way I would go about it, is do the initial practices of the data architecture to get to building your proper data catalog, and then building proper data contracts set up. And then I think that would enable future AI and LLMs to plug in.
We actually have companies that did that thing before. They're self-driving car companies. They have a ton of data and they try to record everything from source. And it turns out 90% of the data is completely useless. For self-driving car companies, totally useless data. And the reason for that is 90% of the data is like pretty good, easy driving. And what they actually have to do is find a way to not upload all the data because it's all useless and only upload the data that they actually want. So.
All right, we've got, I think, time for one more comment, and then we're going to have to wrap things up here. So thank you, first of all, everybody, for being such a great audience and participating. Last comment, no pressure.
Okay, going back to my reference, librarian reference interview for continuing from previous session. To answer your question, will Gen AI kill BI? I think the answer is no, so long as the BI teams are actually doing their job right. Because building on things that a lot of you didn't hear. A fundamental assumption that the reference librarian takes to answer a question is that the thing that you come and ask is not the thing that you actually need to know. And the job of the reference librarian is to uncover what is your true information need. And that takes human skills, empathy and curiosity, non-judgment, and building rapport. And that's not something that Gen AI can do. And that's like So if your BI teams are doing their jobs right, that should not be a question they have to ask. But if they're just doing whatever the person comes and asks them to do without getting further question, without really digging in and figuring out what is this person or organization's information need and how can I best fulfill it, if they're not doing that, then maybe their jobs are in danger.
Yeah, so it comes back to the human skills at the end of the day, right? All right, we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up there. Thank you everybody for joining us for the first ever live episode. And thank you for tuning in on the internet to this last minute live stream. We appreciate everybody. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you. And we're waiting for Bill Inman, he should be here, but I don't see